Hello my fiery friends, the Infernoman here with the latest in budget deck technology. And for today's deck we're going to be covering another control deck, but however this one's a lot different than the other ones we've played. Now I know we've already done several toxic style decks out there already, but I thought to myself, wait, what if we considered going beyond Explorer and Standard and we can make a toxic control deck on a budget in Historic? Challenge accepted. So what you see on screen right now is what we're going to be talking about today. Going over the stats of this, you can see on screen right now, we are running an average mana curve of about 1.7. We're running only 12 creatures in the deck and 28 non-creatures. Specifically, it'll be 17 instants, 30 sorceries, 4 artifacts, and 6 enchantments with a land base of about 20 going into the Esper colors. The budget for the deck is pretty nice, so as you can see on screen right now, it won't take you too many rares compared to most other control decks. Now it's pretty obvious we're going to be leaning into Toxic, but what does Historic provide for us that the other formats doesn't have? One of the biggest advantages, Abiding Grace. Let's actually talk about this card very briefly. Abiding Grace is a 3 mana enchantment where it says, at the beginning of your end step, you choose one. You either gain 1 life or return target creature card with a mana value of 1 from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now as you can see, our creatures, as I mentioned earlier, are only 1-drops. We only have about 10 that are actually 1-drops. So Billowas Skull Dweller. We have Skrelv Defector Might, Crawling Chorus. Our only other 2 creatures is the 2-drop, which is Voidwing Hybrid, but we'll talk about this in a second. With the help of Abiding Grace, Crawling Chorus, Skrelv, and the Skull Dweller all can come back very easily with Abiding Grace, allowing us to be pretty reckless with how we can get these cards to do some damage. Skull Dweller is extremely helpful because it has Death Touch, which provides us a great blocker in the early to even late game. We've taken advantage of Skrelv in other decks, so obviously I won't go over it again, but it's excellent for our deck and it protects what we're trying to do. Crawling Chorus is also another creature where we don't care if it dies, because as it dies, it brings back a Phyrexian Might. As you can tell from Abiding Grace, because we're reckless, we can keep bringing these back to make more Might creature tokens. Now, obviously, the Might creature tokens can't block, but we're trying to be as aggressive as possible. And the only way we can actually maintain that aggressiveness is we have a plethora of cheap interaction that allows us to either gain some card advantage or just remove creatures and keep control of the board. The only other creature, as I mentioned a moment ago, was Voidwing Hybrid. This 2-mana 2/1 flying Phyrexian Bat not only has Toxic, but because of its flying ability, it's very evasive. The other way we can bring this back is it works on its own with, as you see, the Proliferate. When we proliferate, we return the Voidwing Hybrid from our graveyard to our hand. To provide for us some extra backup beyond that, we have Skrell's Hide, of course. We've seen us use this before in the other deck tech I mentioned earlier, where it just is going to keep making us some Might creature tokens to hopefully just overwhelm our opponent and finish off them with poison counters. Since we're going to be leaning completely into the Toxic and Proliferate abilities, we're going to take advantage of some of the cards that really want a lot of poison counters on our opponents. So we have cards such as Bring the Ending, which is going to be a hard counter once we have Corrupted activated. Experimental Augury allows us to proliferate as we dig for our extra cards. Some removal options with Anoint with Affliction, and even some options that don't really take advantage of the game plan per se, but they're really awesome cards, so that's why we want to add them in. The advantage of playing in the Historic format allows us options such as Bone Shards. We also have Ether Spell Bomb. This is going to be a great neutral option to bounce stuff away, so we don't care about if they have hexproof of a certain color or protection of a certain color. We have other cards to give us some card advantage, like Deadly Dispute, to give us some card draw and treasures. We can sacrifice some of our tokens to take advantage of that. Same with Sacrifice. Also, we have Make Disappear, which is also another of our great counters in this deck that ensures that we can get through with our game plan. And the only other card that we can talk about right here is Anoint with Affliction, which same thing with Corrupted, it'll allow us to exile a creature if we have 3 or more poison counters, which against certain creatures is hard removal. As for your land base, this is also again where it gets a little tricky, but the advantage is we are a control deck, so we can afford to slow down a little bit. So the land base, of course, will have 3 plains, 3 islands, 3 swamps. We will then use a variety of tap lands. We're going to use the gain lands. Some may argue that because we are using Deadly Dispute, you could actually put in the artifact lands, but I really don't want us to sacrifice our lands if we don't have to. So instead, we want to maintain stability since we are using Skrell's Hide, and Skrell's Hide, of course, will make us lose life. So that's why we're going to be using the gain lands as our tap land of choice. We will also have a couple of other draw cards, so we have Waterfront District and Skybridge Tower. We can sack these to at least draw us a card, so that gives us a small bit of mid and late game reach. The other rares that we're going to take advantage of is Karn's Bastion. This allows us to proliferate our entire party and allows us to then trigger off stuff while we're waiting to hopefully either gain some more card advantage, or we can just poison out our opponent with just our land base. The only other rare land we will have is the Seed Core. The Seed Core is sneakily good in this deck because, again, we can cast our Phyrexian creature spells with any mana color thanks to this one card. And also with the Corrupted ability, it allows us to turn one of our creatures that has a 1/1, such as the Skull Dweller, such as the Crawling Chorus, and make them much more stronger, so they're better blockers if we really need them in a pinch. But otherwise, that's basically it for the main part of the deck. As far as your sideboard is concerned, if you do want to play this in best of 3, you have an extra copy of Bone Shards. We will then use an entire set of Duress for control decks. We have some Whisper of the Dross if we do need a little bit more spot removal in the early game. Another copy of Bring the Ending. A Fracture as your catch-all against Artifact, Enchantment, or Planeswalkers if we need it in the pinch. For Graveyard Hate, we have Ashiok Dream Render, 2 copies of that. And I know I usually tend to dunk a lot on alchemy cards, but this one's actually pretty good for our deck. Ichor Aberration. Let's talk about this real quick. This Phyrexian Horror is a 3/3 with Flying and Defender, and as long as the Aberration's power is 7 or greater, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. When you proliferate, if the Aberration is in your graveyard or on the battlefield, Ichor Aberration perpetually gets +1/+1, and then you may cast it from your graveyard this turn. So, as you kind of figured out with our proliferate abilities and everything else, the Aberration is a great card to sideboard in as a massive flyer if we just want to clean out the game in one fell swoop. Otherwise, in terms of other options you have, we have Supreme Verdict as our catch-all against creature-heavy decks, and it can't be countered, so guaranteed it can blow up the board. And the only other alchemy card that we are going to use is Seething Skitter Priest. So this 4-mana Phyrexian Cleric with Toxic 1 is a 3/3, and it reads, when Seething Skitter Priest enters the battlefield, creatures you control and creature cards in your hand perpetually gain. When this creature dies, we create a 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might Artifact creature token with Toxic 1, and of course, it can't block. So otherwise, imagine that your Abiding Grace triggers off the Crawling Chorus that was affected by Seething Skitter Priest. You basically get the idea here. It can help us create a lot of tokens, so that's why we have a single copy of it. But otherwise, that's the whole deck for you. We basically focus on getting our super cheap creatures out, protect them when you absolutely have to, but we don't care if they die because Abiding Grace is what will help them come back, and we just control the board. Once we get at least 1 or 2 poison counters on our opponent, we will slowly and surely eat them away. But of course, the final question we're going to ask is this plan on a budget actually possible? Can we somehow win with this style of deck? Let's go ahead and let's take it into a couple matches in Historic and find out. But before we continue, if you do like any of the content that I do, please like, follow, and subscribe wherever you watch the content so you don't miss out on any of the gameplay, booster pack openings, deck decks, and so much more. Okay, here we go, everybody. We are playing our Esper Control deck, aka our Phyrexian / control deck, using a bunch of little critters. I don't know. Maybe you guys came up with a better name. In any case, so we got a bunch of our 1-drops, which is great. Pretty easy to cast everything right now. Okay, so with that, we will play Swamp, Skull Dweller. Okay, Shockland, and okay, this is probably the Prowess deck, everybody. So let's see if we can somehow get around this. Here we go swinging. And down to 17. They got 1 poison counter. We're 9 away. This Anoint with Affliction actually is going to help us out here. Searing Blood. Anoint with Affliction. Exile that. We lose the Skull Dweller, but that's okay. So, Seed Core. Crawling Chorus. We'll pass. If they attempt to get rid of the Crawling Chorus, we'll then just hit it with Deadly Dispute. Another land. Lava Runner. Do they have more removal? Wizard's Lightning to our face. Down to 14. Stupid Critics. We're down to 11. Might be a little scary here. Crawling Chorus. We chump block, but we will now Deadly Dispute. Sacrifice the Chorus. They do not get any additional damage. We then make a treasure. Voidwind and Hybrid is not too bad here either. How do we do this? Okay, so I think what we're going to have to do is let's actually put down the Skull Dweller and the Chorus. Go with 1 Might. 2 poison counters now. We need to keep up mana just to have the Make Disappear ready. Another land. Viashio Pyromancer. Oh, okay, so are they just a simple burn deck? Okay, well that's fine. Play with fire. So we're down to 7. We're a little bit of a iffy spot right now. Opponent goes swinging. That's fine. We will chump block there, getting rid of their Viashido Pyromancer. Okay, so with that, here's how we do this. Okay, so Skrell's Hide. We will Experimental Augury. Digging for a card. We will play Abiding Grace. There we go. That's what we need. We then activate Skrell's Hide Corrupted ability. So now we have lifelink, so we can stabilize. Opponent chump blocks, and that's perfectly fine. This is what you want your deck to do. So even though our opponent's going to be super aggro here, as we keep gaining life, there's not going to be a way for them to get back from us. And there you go, everybody. So that's how the deck goes. I know, not super crazy there, but hey, that's a win, and we will take it. Okay, my fiery friends, here we go. Phyrexia controls all. We are playing our Esper Control build. And let's see what we got. Okay, not too bad. Got some ways to dig for cards. We can make a bunch of little mites. Let's keep this hand and see where it goes. Okay, so we'll put down our planes first, and a Crawling Chorus to begin. Okay, so not too shabby right now. Again, we have plenty of ways of just creating a bunch of tokens, and hopefully we can get to victory this way. Oh, are they playing elves? Looks like it's elves. That's okay. We will find a way to get around that. No attacks, of course, because we can't get through that 2 toughness blocker. Elves is going to go off pretty quickly here, so hopefully we can make enough tokens to just get out of this. Elvish Visionary. That's okay right now. Opponent, Alice Short Shepherd. Okay, that's the thing here, but alright. We will make our way out of this. So we will put that out. Let us go swinging to create our first poison. Alright, 1 poison counter on board. And then from here, we'll pass. We're only going to pass because, again, if they bring out a Lord, we got to find a way to just get rid of it. And there it is. Okay, so down. We then get rid of the Archdruid. They're going to go swinging. Yes, they do. Okay, so we're down to 19. Another Skrell's Hide, so let's start getting our mites on board. This time we will not attack. We're going to hold off for a bit. Another Forest. Collecting Company, so let's see what they hit. If they hit anything big, we might be in trouble. And we might be in trouble. Oh boy. That's elves for you, everybody. Okay, so can't really do much here except stem the bleeding. So block 1. We make a token. Another token. Scoured Barrens. Gain some life. Experimental Augury. We need to dig for something here. Okay, so Night with Affliction's good for next turn. Put a token on board here. No attacks. But we're still not in a good spot. Everything here still could blow us up. Elvish Clan Caller. I don't think we're winning this one, everybody. Okay, we'll just play it out and we'll just see what happens. Oh, good lord. Is that game? I think this is game, everybody. Yeah, that's game. Well, that's elves for you, everybody. We just can't get through this many things. Okay, opponent. You can stop adding creatures now. We're beyond dead at this point. Yeah, we're done.
Stop! He's already dead.
Well, that hurt. That was terrible. But, I mean, what can you do against elves, everybody? Okay, my fiery friends, here we go. We are playing our Esper Control build with a hint of poison counters on it. So, okay. So, we got some removal, card draw, and some protection. Again, slow because of the tap lands, but that's what happens when you play a budget deck. But we'll keep this and see if we can make it work. Okay, opponent did some mulliganing, and that's perfectly fine. We will put down our Scoured Barrens, gain a life, and pass. So game plan right now, get the Crawling Chorus down, assuming they have some removal. Okay, they are definitely have black, so expect removal, of course. Skybridge Tower. Crawling Chorus. Even if they do have removal, we can Deadly Dispute a way to get value out of our sacrifice. Oh, okay. Okay, we just bugged out. Okay, now the game just crashed on us. All right, resetting. Resetting Arena right now because it decided to poop out on us, everybody. Let's hope that the game did not just give our opponent a free win. Okay, we're back where we need to be, sort of. And we'll then Skrell's Hive. Waterfront District. No attacks. Wait, what did we loot? Did we lose our Deadly Dispute? Wow. Arena. Okay, it's fine. We're gonna make it work, everybody. Some way, somehow. Scoured Barrens. We will attack. They block. Skrell. And we pass. Phyrexian Obliterator. Normally that's a very frightening card, but we have a way to get around that. So here's what we're going to do this. So we will Bone Shards, sacrifice one of our little critters. Phyrexian Obliterator gone. Put down Ichor Aberration. They go down to 17, and we got 3 poison counters up on board now. So, not too shabby. Grave Merchant. Doesn't do too much against us. Taking another token. And everything now has lifelink, which is even better for us. Let us put on one of our mites. Toxic. And then we now go swinging with it. Down to 21. They have 5 poison counters. Alright, so not too shabby right now. Despite all the weird, goofy graphic stuff we had, we're still doing okay here. So, Grave Merchant will now get countered. Very nice. So we're still definitely in this game. Make another Mite. Crawling Course is also sweet here. Let us hit one more time. Black. Go swinging with everything. We do lose 1 Mite here, but that's perfectly fine. We don't care about the damage. We just care about poison counters. They're up to 8 now. We'll put down a Crawling Chorus and pass. Okay, so I think we can win right here. On this next turn, we should be good. And there we go, everybody. We got it. Despite the fact that Arena glitched out and bugged us, so we had to reset our software and our graphics card, we still got to victory, so I will take it. And there you have it, everybody. So that was our Phyrexia Controls All, an Esper Control build with a slight twist on what it normally does. And let's be honest here, I'm actually really satisfied with how this deck worked out. Even though it is very budget and it is very slow, as you know, control decks are meant to be slow because you're trying to just whittle away your opponent's stuff until you can get to where you want to be at. Now, granted, we did have 1 major loss, and it kind of exemplifies what our biggest weakness is in the main deck, especially if you're playing best of 1. We are very slow against more heavily aggro decks. So as you kind of saw, against elves, we kind of lose pretty heavily here. Against also some other strategies out there, such as goblins, that also can go wide and go fast against us. Certain burn decks, if they do hit well, can beat us, but you saw we are able to beat them out. It takes a while for us to stabilize, because again, we hopefully want to just drain out their removal until we can get Skrell's Hive out, and then hopefully we can just ride that out to victory, getting lifelink, and then eventually getting those poison counters on our opponent. So keep in mind that if you do want to get the most out of this deck, it is doable in best of 1, as you kind of saw from our matches. But because of how our deck is designed, you definitely want to consider this much more for best of 3. I didn't really have any good best of 3 footage, so what you see today was honestly the best we got. Yes, that did include that really bad glitchy game, but we won, so that's why I also wanted to keep it in there. Now, as far as upgrades to the deck, as you can see right here, most of it is going to be just about what you would predict. Obviously, we're not going to really change that much of the main deck. We want to maintain the integrity of that as much as possible, because otherwise there's no point in running this game plan as is. So all you really just want to do to upgrade the deck is just, we're going to rearrange, to no surprise, the land base. So Hollow Fountains, your Godless Shrines, Watery Graves, couple copies of Raffine's Tower. I would honestly refrain from using too many tap lands, so that's why we only need 2. This will also give us room to not only maintain our Seed Core and Karn's Bastion, but also Mirex. Mirex allows us just to create a bunch of extra Phyrexian mites when we need them if, say, the entire game plan somehow goes to pieces. As far as the sideboard upgrades are concerned, you will then have Thoughtseize as an option here as your upgrade to Duress, of course, and your only other thing that you could really change out is Unlicensed Hearse, getting rid of Ashiox to have a much more powerful secondary secondary option that can also incrementally exile cards, but also creates for us a giant beatdown creature if we need to in a pinch. And the only other thing I would recommend is Teferi Time Raveler. Obviously, because this is historic, it's a little nerfed versus the original version, but it's still extremely powerful. We can get it on the battlefield. Our opponents can't cast spells during their turn, which is extremely powerful for us to make sure we can maintain momentum on the board. However, if you are interested in this style of gameplay, I would definitely say this is much more unique than any of the other control decks that are running around the format right now. It has a very different take that also takes advantage of some of the newer cards. It shows you don't need a bunch of rares and mythics to go all in on making a powerful control deck. Most of control decks tend to be focusing on, of course, maintaining those tempo plays and ensuring that with the little increments of damage that you can do, you'll eventually just overwhelm your opponent and exhaust them of resources. So my only final thought I'm going to say is, if you are a fan still of Phyrexia, if you are completely not tired of toxic decks out there and you want to try something a little bit different out there than otherwise everything else that's currently running around is historic, I would definitely say give this deck a try. And I assure you, no matter which version you play, whether it's the upgraded one we just talked about, or if you do want to play it on a budget, you will definitely not be disappointed.
That's all I have for you today. Thanks again for watching, everyone. And just remember that no matter what you do play in the game of life, always be sure to burn bright. Later.